Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here with another Master Duel video for you. So I am here now with the release of the Salamangreat structure deck. It's actually the day after this deck release that I'm recording this. I wanted to get a little bit of testing in with the deck here. I also just needed to get a little bit warmed up again, as it's been about 2 weeks actually since I've played Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. I've just had a lot of IRL stuff going on. I actually moved recently, so getting used to my new setup here, but yeah, I decided to jump back into it with this structure deck release, which is a very welcome structure deck release because this is a deck that I've actually thought about building a couple of times here for the channel, right? Salamangreats, because it seems like a deck that's fairly up my alley as far as like it's fairly combo based. It's got good like first turn potential. It's got great second turn potential. This deck is actually phenomenal going second, and actually a lot of the games that I end up winning, not just playing but winning, because I think a total of like 7 test games and I won 6 of them. I went 6-1, and a lot of those games I won just going second and pulling off an update jammer into Accesscode OTK. In fact, even the games that I went first, I then threatened lethal by threatening to go into update jammer Accesscode. So there is a bit of a tendency to lean on that line, as I kind of do in Adagnister, but it's a good line to lean on, right? Of course, we end on an Accesscode Talker that can attack twice for lethal by itself and is able to pop multiple cards, and of course that effect cannot be responded to. We have all, you know, we all know how absurd Accesscode Talker is by this point, right? So as far as what Salamangreats do specifically, though, aside from just making update jammer to Accesscode Talker, it's a really consistent combo deck in that there's a lot of different ways to combo, and the cards have a lot of different abilities to recur themselves from the graveyard, which makes it very resilient as a combo deck. We tend to notice that combo decks that can recur resource from the graveyard tend to be the ones that are more resilient towards getting hit with disruption. Typically, you want to just go into Salamangreat Gazelle as early as possible, and on a typical first turn, you'll actually want to use its effect to send Salamangreat Roar to the graveyard, as it's not that difficult to then go into a Sunlight Wolf. From there, we can, or rather, we start by going into the Balelynx. That'll search us the field spell of Sanctuary. Then we go into Sunlight Wolf. And then, of course, using the Sanctuary effect to use a Sunlight Wolf to make another Sunlight Wolf. That will allow us to return a Salamangreat spell or a trap card from the graveyard to the hand, which is going to be the Roar that we send with our Gazelle typically. So that's going to set up, the Salamangreat Link monster, as well as the Roar, which is an Omni-Negate counter trap card, whose only requirement, it's an Infinity Barrier basically, and the only real requirement is that you control a Salamangreat Link monster. Now, it's also not typically too difficult to set up a Bagooska in addition to this. If you can get 2 level 4 monsters on the board, which is another great Floodgate card, another great first turn card for this deck to make. You summon this in defense mode, your opponent's not going to be able to do much of anything, as they won't be able to use the effects of their monsters. And this deck is fairly resistant to Bagooska. A lot of the effects activate in graveyard or hand to like summon the monster, or when they're sent to the graveyard. And of course, being a link-based deck, the monsters can't go to defense mode, so you can actually play through your own Bagooska very easily. Of course, the other Xyz monster in the deck is the Miragestallio here, which is a more, of course, a in-archetype Xyz monster. As you can see, this deck is, and of course it is, it makes sense because it coincides with the this event's beginning. This deck, suffice it to say, is a fairly good pick for the Link Ladder Festival there. So if you're looking for an easy deck, you can just pick up 3 of this structure deck, and then you're good to go. You even get the 3 Cynet Mining with it, which is pretty rad. I already had 3 Cynet Mining, but that's totally cool anyway, right? We can, of course, just dismantle our current copies, and we get a free Ultra Rare out of it. So, yeah, definitely a welcome addition, this structure deck here. And, of course, also introduced Decode Talker Heatsoul into the game. I believe this is actually the only, because you can't generate it, so I believe if you want this card, you do have to get the structure deck there, of course, but 500 gems a pop. It's very well worth it, but this card is very, very useful, not just in this deck, but in pretty much any cyberspace deck, from what I can tell. Adagnister definitely has a lot of combos they can do, or at least a combo line they can do with Decode Talker Heatsoul. And I do intend to take another look at Adagnister now that we have Decode Talker Heatsoul at a later time. Ideally at some point this season before the end of the month here. But I actually kind of thought about using add a Nister potentially for the Link event. The problem is you don't get access to Wind Pegasus. You don't get Light Dragon either, but that's not as big of a deal. I'm mainly concerned about not having Wind Pegasus. I'll have to experiment and see how much that really impacts what the deck can do, and see if it's still worth using in the Link Festival. Of course, I am planning on trying this deck, Salamangreats and Link Festival, and I've got another deck in mind that I am pretty certain I'm going to try. It's actually, I think that the other deck is actually going to be the first deck I try before even this one, so look forward to seeing that as well. Yeah, so this deck is fairly combo. Like I said, it's a combo-based deck, but it's one of those combo decks that, like, you really only need 1 or 2 cards typically to get going. So as a result, as you can see, we're playing a lot of Disruption. We're playing the 2 Veilers and 3 Imperms, 3 Season Ash, of course, as well as the Ghost Ogre and a Nibiru as well. We're playing Feather Duster because there's still enough spell and trap-based decks running around on ladder out there that you want to have the out to the back rows there. Let's see here. Otherwise, everything else is fairly standard. Not every deck Salamangreat is playing some of these. Sorry, not every Salamangreat deck rather is playing some of these cards. Like, not every deck plays Fowl. Not every deck I don't think plays Will of the Salamangreat. But I like these cards as extenders. I think they're fine. And I wanted to test, like, with as many of the in-archetype cards as I could, just see which ones I liked and which ones I didn't. I'm liking everything I see here. And even though it's not a Salamangreat card, I find that Flame Bufferlo is actually typically one of my favorite ways to open, as it'll usually not only cycle you into more extenders, but often sending a Salamangreat monster from your hand to the graveyard is exactly what you need in order to get plays going. Like, pretty much all of them, right? Like, the Gazelle will trigger, it'll actually trigger in hand, you know, even if, or rather, it'll trigger in hand if you send another Salamangreat monster. The Foxy, you know, that'll set that up in graveyard. Spinny can get set up in graveyard. Jaguar can get set up in graveyard. Falco can get set up in graveyard. So it's like really only like Fowl and Gazelle you typically don't want to summon with the, or you don't want to send to the Flame Bufferlo. All the other Salamangreat cards are definitely a-okay to send there. Yeah, I'm definitely not like an expert in this deck just yet, but I can already tell just by playing around with it a little bit that I have, which is you know, just under 10 games now. I think I mentioned earlier, I think it was 7. I'm 6-1 so far. Just playing around with it so far, I'm definitely really liking this deck, and it's one of those decks I would actually like to refine and come back to, honestly. And it's funny, you know, we had all the cards to build this deck this whole time, but of course now that we have the structure deck now, we're actually seeing it a lot. And I think we're actually going to see a surge of Salamangreat in the meta as a result. I can definitely see Salamangreat becoming like a solid tier 3 deck due to the popularity it's gaining from the structure deck release here, right? As we always know, it's not just a deck's power level that dictates its place in the meta, but it's often more the case in this power level, its popularity. And here we see Salamangreat, which as power level wise probably does teeter between tier 3 and rogue status, right? But just again, due to the structure deck release and the accessibility of this deck, we're definitely seeing tier 3 representation. And that, I think, combined with the power level, does justify a tier 3 slot for this deck at this time. So, alright, that about covers everything I wanted to with the deck there. Now let's go ahead and break the list down card by card before we take a look at some gameplay. So we are playing 2 Effect Veiler, 3 Maxx, 1 Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 3 Flame Bufferlo, 2 Salamangreat Foxy, 2 Salamangreat Gazelle, 2 Salamangreat Spinny. Is it Spiny or Spinny? I think it's Spinny, but I'm not actually 100% sure. 1 Salamangreat Falco, 2 Salamangreat Jaguar, 1 Salamangreat Fowl, 1 Nibiru, the Primal being, 1 Harpie's Feather Duster, 3 Cynet Mining, 1 Salamangreat Sanctuary, 1 Will of the Salamangreat, 2 Call by the Grave, 3 Salamangreat Circle, 1 Crossout Designator, 3 Infinite Impermanence, 1 Salamangreat Rage, and then finally 1 Salamangreat Roar. The extra deck is going to have 1 Salamangreat Miragestallio, 1 number 41 Bagooska, the terribly tired Tapir, 3 Salamangreat Balelynx, 1 Linguriboh, 1 Update Jammer, 3 Salamangreat Sunlight Wolf, 1 Splash Mage, 1 Transcode Talker, 1 Decode Talker Heatsoul, 1 Apollusa Bow of the Goddess, and 1 Accesscode Talker. I will say about the extra deck that I think I might take out this Apollusa as well as maybe 1 other extra deck monster in order to try a couple of the Heatleos. Just to see how I like that in the extra deck. I might take out Linguriboh. I haven't really used this much. Could also see myself potentially taking out the Heatsoul. I know I just said, you know, it's a good card. It is a good card, but I don't find myself summoning it too often. So, but the Heatleos I think would also be a bit of a fringe extra deck option. So, I guess if nothing else, know that there is some flexibility here in the extra deck. But all right, now that we have talked about the build itself, let's go and take a look at some games. Okay, so this first duel here is going to be against, good old level 8/rank 8 spam, the going second deck. It's not really playing Dangers from looking at the opponent's list. It's just playing a bunch of level 8, like, kind of spam kind of monsters. So we're going to take the first turn here, and I picked this game because it's a pretty good example of what, an ideal, like, ending turn 1 setup looks like. Right, so we're going to circle for Gazelle. Like I mentioned in the deck profile, Gazelle is often what we're going to want to add or search for if we don't already have it in hand, as it is one of the main kind of engine cards to keep our deck going. It's going to send the Salamangreat Roar from the deck to the graveyard to set up our Omni to get counter trap for the opponent's turn. So I'm going to start by normal sending the Flame Bufferlo and using that for the Balelynx, chain blocking the Bufferlo's effect with the Balelynx so that we can draw the Sanctuary, or search the Sanctuary before we potentially draw it. And then because I would slightly rather have the Bufferlo effect, I think, than the Balelynx effect, most of the time. I think in this scenario that's the case. So yeah, I can summon the Gazelle, and then because Gazelle summoned itself, we can special summon Fowl, so this is great. We've got more than enough materials to make our, again, fairly standard turn 1 opening play here. Gonna go for the Salamangreat Sunlight Wolf at this point. Then I'll use the Jaguar effect, putting the Balelynx back to summon it in the Wolf zone. A Wolf can add the Gazelle back to the hand. This is not a necessary step, but it is nice to have a little bit of extra advantage in hand in that regard. So now that I've activated the Sanctuary, I can actually use Sunlight Wolf to make another Sunlight Wolf, kind of ignoring its requirements there via the Salamangreat Sanctuary effect. And because we did so, that's going to allow us to use Wolf's second effect to return that Roar from the graveyard to our hand. We also could have done so with Roar's effect, but then it would have been banished when it left the field. And if we do it with the Sunlight Wolf's effect, we can potentially recur it if the game continues on for longer. So as you can see, we had 2 leftover level 4 monsters there. That allowed us to summon the number 41 Bagooska here. So yeah, now, because that's in defense mode, our opponent's monsters are going to get changed to defense mode, their effects can be negated, and, they're not going to be able to do too much. They've got a Raigeki here to try to wipe our board. Of course, I'm going to use the Roar in order to stop this. I know my opponent's probably going to have more follow-up plays to this, but, of course, if they Raigeki here, then those follow-up plays are going to be even more nasty. So, they're going to start by sending a Pankratops. I'm not worried about it because I've got the terribly tired Tapir on board. I am, however, worried about this super polymerization. Yeah, that's going to definitely throw a bit of a wrench in my plan, but it's not that big of a deal. I'll summon a Mud Dragon in the swamp here. It's actually kind of lucky that they had an Earth monster. I guess not necessarily lucky, but it's fortunate, I guess I should say, that they had an Earth monster to fuse into the Mud Dragon there. Because a Salamangreat monster went to the graveyard there, I'm actually able to use the Gazelle's effect. In this case, so and then I'll use the Sunlight Wolf's effect as well. Opponent's gonna try to follow up with a Fateful Adventure. I'm gonna use the Ash Blossom here, just because I don't want them to set this up. It's a bit of a risk because this last card might still be live and might be ashable. This could be a bait here, but it's not. They're just gonna use the Gizmek effect from graveyard, and then also the last monster, which is a Mono Iwado, which is a floodgate kind of a spirit monster, seems like here. So I'll take a bit of damage. I'm not really too concerned about it. I'm like slightly worried about the Gizmex effect here, but I think we're able to play around it relatively well here. So I've got the Bufferlo and the Falco in my hand, so I've at least got the potential to set up for some gas. And as long as my opponent doesn't destroy this Balelynx right away with the Gizmek, then I'm in good shape. Then I'm pretty sure I can just make plays. And unfortunately, I did not draw any more extenders or any other kind of gas in terms of my draws off of the what do you call it, the Bufferlo there. Just more hand traps, just another maxi that I don't need, and a Ghost Ogre that might be useful, but not particularly. Again, I was looking for definitely more acceleration, more combo fuel, but we've actually got enough in graveyard to keep going from here. Like I mentioned in the profile, this deck is just really, really good, really resilient when it comes to recurring its resources from the graveyard. The deck does that a lot very naturally, so here I'm basically I'm just going to try to end up going into, of course, the update jammer and access code play. I'm going to try to gain as much advantage as I can along the way here, just in case my opponent disrupts me. They do still have the Gizmek effect here, but then my opponent surrenders, which I definitely think was a bit premature, as I was still playing around the Gizmek effect at that point. Unless I just misread the card or misread the situation, they weren't able to use that effect. I was very much still trying to play around it while still trying to find a way into the update jammer access code OTK. So I think it was a bit of a premature conceit on my opponent's part there, but that's definitely not something we'll ever complain about, right? So, alright, now let's go ahead and take a look at the next game. Alright, so this next game is going to be against Branded Dragon Maid, which is actually a deck that I kind of meant to try out, but it's kind of one of those, I have this like list of decks, and sometimes I do actually physically write out the list of decks that I want to try, and You know, there's some that just end up towards the bottom, and just due to the nature of like wanting to update the more relevant decks or more decks that I'm more interested in, I just never get around to. But even though it's against Branded Dragon Maid, it's kind of just going to be showing what a turn 2 setup looks like, because the opponent's not really going to be doing much of anything here. They just pass on their turn 1 there. We've got the Cynet Mining, they have the Ash, but we have the Call By. We actually have both Call By, which is fairly fortunate for us here. So Nibiru is really about the only thing that's going to be able to truly stop us at this point. Yeah, we'll use the Cynet Mining. I actually added the Bufferlo here, which I probably should have added the Gazelle. You can kind of make an argument, I guess, either way, but the Bufferlo was a little bit of a risky add. Well, we had the Salamangreat Circle too, that's right, sorry. I thought there was another Cynet Mining for some reason, or I thought rather that we had already used Salamangreat Circle, but I always forget that Flame Bufferlo is not actually a Salamangreat monster. You'd really think it would be. It almost seems like it was going to be one, and they intentionally made it not one to make it like a little bit less powerful, because if that card could be searched by Circle and just got Salamangreat support in general, I think that'd be a little bit ridiculous. It really kind of feels like they took the name Salamangreat off of that monster at the very last second, honestly. But, you know, whatever. It's still a fine addition for the deck here. So, here I'm going to go into the Splash Mage. As I mentioned, I'm going for the Update Jammer OTK. I'm not going to try to make any fancy plays setting up like an Omni-Negate counter trap and a Bagooska. Yep, no need to do that when we can just, you know, win. So here I'm actually going to go for, if I recall correctly, I think I go for the Transcode here. I'm actually going to go for the 5300 double attack. Yeah, I do. The 5300 double attack as opposed to the 4300. It typically doesn't matter if you have 5300 or 4300 attack, especially in a situation like this. But I just want to show off how you can set up a 5300 access code that can attack twice as opposed to one with 4300. It does sometimes matter, but I don't think it typically does. Most of the time I just go for a 4300 attack access code that can attack twice, because you never know, you might need the transcode later. There's not really many situations where you would, but it could still come up, you never know. So, but yeah, that's a pretty easy turn to win right there with the, of course, Update Jammer line. So, alright, now let's go and take a look at the next game. Alright, this duel is going to be against a 60-card hero deck, so I'm going to give a nice salute. You can't see me, but a nice salute to our hero friend here, a very heroic friend. I actually recently got a new hero mat to use as a mouse pad on my desk, so yeah. God, I really want to make an alt account just to play heroes one of these days, because I can never quite justify building heroes on the main account here. It would just eat literally all of the ultra rare gems that I've been saving up to this point. So, yeah, in any case here, Phil's going to e-call for Stratos, and I'll drop the Imperm. Now, normally I might think a little bit more about the Imperm and might not just shotgun it against the first effect here, but one, against heroes, against Stratos specifically, it's not that bad to blind kind of Impermanent, because they've already used their normal summon and you're denying them, you know, more acceleration. Now they might still have more acceleration in plays anyway, and it's not uncommon for that to be the case, but I also did note that my opponent was playing a 60 card deck, so I figured it was much less likely for that to be the case, because especially for a hero deck, 60 cards is admirable, but it's definitely not common. And I definitely think that this is one of those decks where 60 cards would be a bit more of a gimmick, because it'll just bog down the consistency of the deck as opposed to playing 40 cards, right? So I was fairly comfortable just shotgunning the Imperm against the Stratos here, which should end up being the right call, as the opponent doesn't have any follow-up and they have to pass at that point. So, yeah, looking at my hand here, it's not super great because, oh no, I got the Circle, that's right. I was going to say because I don't have a Salamangreat monster, but I still can't, or I still don't recognize, like, Circle as the, you know, the way I memorize cards, honestly, is by their art more than anything else. Like, if I don't, like, fully have a deck memorized, if you see the name, it might take me a moment to remember exactly which card it is, but if you show me the picture, then I'm like, oh, wait, that card, so, but I'm still getting used to that, so I'm still trying to equate Circle's picture to this is any Salamangreat monster, like, in my brain there. So yeah, we'll set up the Balelynx with the Bufferlo there. You know, sending the Gazelle to grave. We've got the Will here, so we can bring the Gazelle back instead of Spinny. Then we can bring the Spinny back. I think I could have done this a little bit more cleanly, as far as making the update. Well, the thing is, I was under Maxx, that's right. So I could have definitely done this a little bit more cleanly, but I wanted to do it in as few summons as possible to give my opponent as little of a chance of drawing Nibiru as possible. And I'm more comfortable playing into this Maxx because my opponent's playing a 60-card deck, so it's much less likely that they're going to be able to top deck the Nibiru and stop me from winning here. So again, I think I did this in the least number of summons I could, but in any case, yeah, I'm going to go for the 4300 Accesscode that can attack twice. Of course, we'll pop the Stratos, and then we'll just swing twice with the Accesscode for game. Like I said, this is how I won, like, pretty much, or how I've been winning pretty much all of my games of this deck. And again, this is a lesson I learned very swiftly while playing Adagnister. It's like, it's really, really easy to steal games with Update Jammer plus the Accesscode. Like, if you're playing pretty much any Cyber deck, I think you should probably be playing that line just because, again, how easy it is to just steal games out of nowhere with it. So, yeah, all right, let's go take a look at the next game. Okay, so we did have another going first game. I'm pretty sure I went first this game. This one's actually also going to be against Heroes, which I don't think they actually end up doing much stuff in the way of hero plays, because I don't remember this being like a hero deck specifically, but yeah, we'll take the first turn here. And this is a fantastic hand with the Bufferlo, the Foxy, the Will, and of course both the Callby and the Crossout. So even if we don't get any more acceleration, I think I still have enough, you know, with this opening hand that I can make some pretty solid plays here. But of course, I'm going to use the Bufferlo with the Foxy here. And the opponent's got a Veiler for the Balelynx. And honestly, if you only had Callby or Crossout and not both, I think you could let this resolve and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But because I've got both, I'll go ahead and use the Callby on the Veiler. Opponent's going to respond with the C, but I've got the Crossout, so I'll just go ahead and call it with that. I'm a little bit anxious about Nibiru, but my opponent's got 3 cards, and so I'm not too concerned about it. It's not very likely at all that they have it. You could, I guess, maybe make an argument for not crossing out the Maxx and waiting for the Nibiru, but not on turn 1, never mind now. If it was turn 2, you could definitely make that argument for that line there, but no, definitely not turn 1. Yeah, so I discarded the Foxy here, but I drew the Bufferlo. I did actually draw the Roar, which is not an awful draw here, but drawing the Flame Bufferlo was definitely not super great. It could have been just about any Salamangreat monster, and it would have been much better, but alas, I'm going to go ahead and make the Sunlight Wolf here, and I actually go into the second Sunlight Wolf because I misread the Will of Salamangreat. I thought I could use both effects once per turn, but it's only one effect and once per turn, so there's kind of no need to actually go into the second Sunlight Wolf there. But we'll set up the Roar all the same. Opponent is going to end up passing back to us. It seems like, admittedly, a lot of our opponents are getting pretty bricky hands against us, which is nice, but yeah, no, at this point, the opponent's just going to go ahead and concede there as I go to summon my next Salamangreat monster. Actually, their connection failed, but sometimes it's just as a result of our Rage disconnect. In any case, yeah, as you can see, it was pretty easy to go into, oops, sorry about that, pretty easy to go into Update Jammer from there. I was literally just going to bring something back with the Will of the Salamangreat, the normal summon the Bufferlo, link those into the Update Jammer, or just go to the 4300 Accesscode from there. So that's all for that one. Now I've got one more game to show you. Let's go straight into it. All right, final duel of the video here is going to be against Pendulum Magicians. It's been a little while since I played against Pendulum Magicians. I kind of am thinking that I need to pick up a Pendulum deck. That might be my next kind of project I work on, depending on when the next like big pack release is. We just had a minor pack release with like the water pack. There's not anything in that pack that I'm too interested in building. So if I'm able to save up a decent number of Ultra Craft points, I might be looking into building a Pendulum deck. Because I was looking at my statistics, I don't think I've actually Pendulum summoned yet in Master Duel, which is a little bit sad. So if you've got a Pendulum deck in mind that you would like to see, definitely feel free to suggest it in the comments. Can't guarantee that it'll show up, but I will definitely take all suggestions into consideration there. So yeah, going second here, this is a fantastic going second hand. We have the Ash and the Imperm and the Nibiru, so I'm just going to completely stop anything my opponent is going to do here. I'm going to Imperm this Pendulum Sorcerer here, that way they're not able to pop their scale for more free searches, and then once Harmonizing Magician drops a monster from the deck, I'll just go ahead and Nibiru the field, but it's not going to be able to do anything at that point as they have already used their Pendulum Summon for this turn, so their scale is not going to be able to set up any useful effects for them there. We'll just drop Nibiru and then the monster in defense mode there. And then between Foxy and Falco, we should have enough for plays here. And then, of course, we draw the Flame Bufferlo anyway, so I'll just go ahead and normal summon that. The Flame Bufferlo is so good. Like, this card, it's one of my favorite cards to lead with, honestly. Gazelle is a very, very good card to lead with as well, but the Bufferlo, I'm a huge fan of it, not gonna lie. think I end up sending the Foxy here because we can use the effect to pop one of these scales and discard the Falco to bring it back. I think that's actually exactly what we end up doing here. So, yeah, like I said, we'll discard the Falco, bring back the Foxy. Foxy, I'm going to blow up the Pendulum Sorcerer. I don't want to let them add a card. I mean, not that it really matters. We're just going to win this game anyway, right? As you can see, we're going for the Splash Mage, and you can guess what's going to happen here, right? We're going to bring back the Falco, and then I can use the will of the Salamangreat to bring back the other one, the Foxy. Then from there, we can go to the Update Jammer, and boom, there's your access code with 4,300 that can attack twice. So it looks like it's a bit of a recurring trend this video, huh? But nah, yeah, it's definitely, I think, the way to go with this thing. It's just the easiest way to win, right? Like, yeah, I'm sure there are other, like, flashier lines I could do where I summon a whole bunch of Salamangreat monsters, but it's like, yeah, less is more, you know? And it's just like, you know, it doesn't really, like, yeah, you could style on somebody for a win, but winning simply is still a win, so it's definitely the way to go. IMO. So, yeah, like I said, we'll just poke once again, just poking the opponent twice with access code, and then that is how we're going to secure the duel there. So, alright, that is going to be it for the gameplay. Let's go ahead and move now to the outro. Alright, everybody, thank you so much for watching, especially all the way to the very end like this. I do greatly appreciate that, and I appreciate those of you who are both commenting and or subscribing as well. Comments, if you have any suggestions for the build, as always as ever, I am very, very open to them. Gameplay suggestions as well. If there's some lines I'm overlooking, you know, that aren't update jammer into access code, I would definitely love to hear those. Turn 1 plays, I tried to show more of those, but I ended up going second just a lot of these games, so yeah, that wasn't able to show off quite as many turn 1 lines as I like, but you know, we got to show off Sunlight Wolf plus Bagooska plus Roar, which is like a very common and what you want to strive for on turn 1 anyway. So like I said, we did at least get to show off that there in the first game. So yeah, that's about all I've got for this one. So I think without further ado, this is XLex signing out, and I hope you guys have a fantastic day.